Alright everyone, with a brand new villain, a possibly returning character, and some emergency operations taking place, this chapter is already one of the best that the JoJoLands has to offer. The first thing I want to mention is the chapter title, The Hustle Part 1. I am stoked to see how these next few chapters go. The Hustle is Paco's stand, which means that for the next while, we're going to see Paco truly shine. We have seen glimpses here and there to what Paco is truly capable of, but it seemed like a bunch of nothing. A lot of people made fun of Paco for his ability looking to be bad, but I have hope. I know that Paco has got it in him, and his stand ability will be fire. And we did see some of that in this chapter. And speaking of which, we start this chapter right where we finished, with Jodio in pain, Paco confused, and this new villain character showing up. After months and months of speculation, we finally get to see the face of this mysterious character. And this is it. This is the character. I know some people expected Dr. Wu or something, but with it being some random character, I mean, that also makes sense. It's not like Araki to bring back some random minor villain, especially one that's dead. And, you know, Part 9 needs to have some villains of its own, since we've only had Rohan, a Part 4 character, and 3 cats at this point. So yeah, having a brand new character is a great decision, especially since I think his design is cool. He looks like some wacky version of Yatsuyu. And speaking of Yatsuyu, is this character a rock human? Rock humans were the main villainous force of the last part, but are they here to traumatize us once again? Well, there was a certain part of this chapter that kind of alludes to this being the case. Specifically, the part where Paco tried to strangle this new character. He says that his neck feels like coarse sand. That's pretty similar to rock. So this could lead to a ton of possibilities. A big one is that he is a rock human, but a variant of rock humans. One that is closer to sand humans than rock. So one might say they're Sandmen. I mean, that bears a resemblance to Sandman, who turned out to not be Sandman, but to be Soundman. You know, that makes me think, what if this character starts a variant of rock humans called sand humans, with Araki thinking of this idea in between Sandman's introduction and Soundman becoming his name? It would be pretty cool, but also, wow, the dedication to keep this in your mind for like 18 years is insane. Also, the strange stuff with Sandman would start to make sense. It's just an idea, nothing much, but it is just as interesting as this villain's stand ability, because seriously, it's cool. We saw the first part of the ability, technically for the last 2 chapters, but yeah, pretty much, it's a bunch of floating rocks surrounding the user, which can mold the user into whatever shape it wants. But it looks like the new ability we see in this chapter is much cooler, and more of the main ability for this character. So its ability seems to make it so that the user can change their perception of how far or close they look to people. So, for example, in this chapter, we saw the villain's hand and a cloud fused or something like that. What was going on is that he made it seem like his arm fused into the background when it was right in front of Paco the entire time. This is cool. It's kind of like Risotto, where he makes a body part turn invisible, except instead of making it invisible, this new villain goes into the background, which, I mean, I guess is essentially the same thing, huh? But you know what isn't the same? The 17.2% of my audience subscribe to my channel, compared to the normal person. So, subscribe, please. And you know what? Araki was also saying please to the audience, because of this funny message in this one panel. This is because Dragona and Paco finished their little escapade with the luxury watch, and decided to treat themselves to some juice. And that's when we see this panel containing this message: be sure not to drink until age 20. And good on Araki. It's good for him to tell us this before any young fans make any silly mistakes in life. And speaking of silly things, it was around this section of the chapter we had quite the silly arc. So as you might remember from last chapter, Jodio's neck was slashed by the new villain's sword knife thing. Due to this, for the first half of the chapter, it was just Paco versus the new guy, with Jodio on the floor suffering from being attacked. And it was during this part that Paco told Jodio to just get back up and to stick a band-aid on it or something like that. Well, this worked. A bit later in the chapter, we see Jodio with a band-aid on, and soon enough he is completely fine. Wow, who would have thought putting a band-aid would help in fixing blood gushing from your body? Maybe Josuke could have put a band-aid on Holly. It's quite the JoJolian reference. But it's not the only JoJolian reference in this chapter. This new villain is cool and all, but surprisingly enough, a background character stole the show versus a villain with like 6 chapters of build-up. It's this guy right here. Now, if you didn't realize it already, this character has gotten a bit of fame due to his resemblance to Joshu. That is, a Joshu who could look 10 years older. Joshu was 19 during the events of JoJo, which means this character is somewhere between 29 and 32 years old. If he truly was a JoJoLands version of Joshu, which judging by appearance, yeah, that makes sense. There's also the fact that he's insanely rich. Rich enough to buy an $80,000 watch out of nowhere for a girl. Which, with Joshu being a Higashikata, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. He does have that kind of money. However, it is looking very unlikely to be the case. This seems to just be a random background character who looks very similar to Joshu, mainly because he looks to be inspired by Leonard Suguharu, who is a Japanese and French painter. And yeah, just looking at these pictures, he does seem to be the GOAT. But I mean, there is a possibility of this truly being Joshu, but it's most likely just a giant coincidence. But that's not the only sad thing that occurs in this chapter, since there is a part where Dragona becomes heavily injured due to this villain's attack. It's quite an alarming occurrence. We see the villain use his ability one last time in the chapter with a bunch of birds, which was honestly a really smart way of using the ability, since the chapter shifted focus to the watch instead of this villain. So by the time we forgot about the villain, it was already too late. He already showed up to attack Dragona. It's a great way to circle back the chapter to where we started, but with actual advancements this time, unlike a few other chapters we have seen in JoJoLands so far. Also, in this panel right here with Jodio, it's peak. We can already expect to see Jodio going psycho on this guy because he hurt Dragona. As far as Dragona themselves, if you think they're going to die from this, like, it's only been 10 chapters, what do you want about? Dragona is going to live. Araki wouldn't kill a main cast member this early, and it would be really hard to do so. So, it looks like with smooth operators operating that Dragona is going to be fine. But will this new villain be fine from Jodio's wrath? We're going to have to find that out next chapter. But when it comes to things we can find out now, it's who would win in a fight between the Ender Dragon and Funny Valentine. So watch this video because it answers that very question.